When Netflix announced their new crime action series, Sky Rojo, I got super excited because it's from the creators of Money Heist. So now that it's out, is it worth watching? Coral, Wendy, and Gina go on the run in search of freedom while being chased by Romeo, their pimp from Las Novias Club, and his henchmen, Moises and Christian. We meet our three heroines and are quickly thrust into the world of sex work and drugs. But the story and the characters are not that simple to define. Our main narrator is Coral, and through the course of this 8-episode season, we get pieces of her background and story, but it doesn't all come at once, or even towards the beginning of the show. The same goes for Wendy and Gina. Their info is sprinkled through the episodes, meaning that the show assumes that we will feel some sort of connection and maybe even sympathy for them without knowing too much about them. In one sense, this can be true. The situations that led to the three to be at the brothel can make us very sympathetic to them once we meet the antagonists. There are the three main baddies, but of course they don't see themselves as necessarily bad. Through a ton of conversations and villain exposition, we get to see how they believe that they're the heroes. They're the upright ones bringing a positive service to the world and to the girls. Like I mentioned in the synopsis, there's Romeo, Moises, and Christian. Romeo runs the brothel, which they call a club, and the other two are basically his henchmen. The episodes are quick, at each around 25 minutes long. I think the story is easy to follow and for the most part is linearly told with some flashbacks for the character development. We see an event happen which causes the three women to flee the brothel. Then while on the run, they encounter difficulties, but also are being pursued by Moises and Christian, leading to some drama, then action, and violence. The story progression feels a lot like it takes 3 steps forward and then at least 1 back, and sometimes even more because we watch our characters make decisions that are counterproductive to their goals. The story content is actually pretty dark and rough once we get the info on how the girls came to be at the brothel. And there's a good commentary happening that's addressing views on sex, but also on toxic masculinity. And the show isn't condemning men, but recognizing and addressing how certain thoughts and behaviors perpetuate domination, misogyny, and aggression. There's a bunch of scenes to reinforce this message, but it's not just there for reinforcement. These scenes also work to provide more context for the overall narrative, and then even add some dark or ironic humor. The action in this is quick and exciting, but sometimes I think the edits are just a little too quick. I'd like to see some more of the scenes play out without cutting from angle to angle to allow us to get a larger feel and experience for what's going on. The quick cuts do have their place, and they work well at times too. If you've watched Money Heist, this does have a familiar feel in the storytelling. It's pretty engaging, and it grabs attention fairly quickly to suck us in. It's odd too that the story attempts to make the antagonists sympathetic at times. Not fully sympathetic, but there are moments where we see softer and more intimate times that are designed to make us connect with the antagonists and hopefully feel some sort of conflict as they do terrible things and get into certain situations. Our 3 protagonists also run into this. They're pretty sympathetic, but they also do some things to put themselves in terrible situations that are meant to induce conflict in our emotions. Ultimately, Coral, Wendy, and Gina are characters we root for, especially once we learn of their stories. We want to see them succeed because their situations definitely need to be redeemed. I think because of that, it also makes it easier to cheer them on, even when they're making some questionable decisions once on the run. And while we get enough to build their characters in the flashbacks, there is still a bunch of mystery and info that is teased but not explored. I think this info will make the characters even richer in development, and I hope that in the next season they get to explore more of this area. As far as excitement goes, each episode packs in some anxiety, some tension, and even urgency. The chase that begins from episode 1 and then continues through the show provides some interesting and ultimately very violent scenarios. The situations are a bit ridiculous at times, but they do work well overall. The characters scheme and then plan, and then when it comes time to execute, things go awry, which then leads to more scheming and more planning. One of the things I absolutely loved about this season was the soundtrack. There were a ton of different songs used, and from many different eras and genres. One that especially had me intrigued was a French remake of The House of the Rising Sun. I mean, the music was the same, the lyrics totally different. So this is an enjoyable watch, but I think more story could have been packed into these episodes, or maybe just cut down a little on the flashbacks that didn't necessarily build out the characters. Then they can condense the number of overall episodes, even though there are only 8 episodes to begin with, and they're all 25 minutes long. I'm glad that I was able to connect with the characters because that got me invested in the story and it kept me watching. I'm not sure the story alone would have kept me invested because at its core, it's really just a chase show. We have the bad guy who wants something he thinks is his and is willing to go to great lengths to get it back. The things he thinks are his just happen to be people. So that is a dark twist to the concept, but still, on its own, I don't think it's compelling enough. The writing, and especially with Coral as our narrator, really helps to suck us into what's going on. It gives us a personal perspective that we hopefully then connect with. I'm sure there's going to be a second season, and there really needs to be, because several things are just left unresolved as the credits roll. There is a ton of sex, nudity, profanity, violence, and drug use. I give season 1 of Sky Rojo 3.5 out of 5 couches. So has this been on your radar to watch? If you've seen it, what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.